Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. Today, we are going back to school and talking to the founder of MTA, the Musical Theater Academy over in the UK. We're going to talk about the school, the UK musical theater scene, and what is now the most popular song to sing in class, and to see if it was the same as when I was in class. And I'm going to have to give you a hint. It's not, because I'm old. I hope it's not the same song. I'd like to welcome to the show, Annemarie Lewis-Thomas. Annemarie, welcome.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm already thinking, what is the most popular song in class? That's already fooled me now. I'm already, you're going to get no more sense out of me. I'll just be focused on that.
Works for me, but we'll save it. We don't want, we can tease the listeners, but give it to them a little bit later. Because if we give it to them now, they're going to tune out and be gone. And
I'm with you.
Awesome. So I want to start off with getting to know you. I want the Annemarie 30-second bio. Who is Annemarie in 30 seconds?
Okay, so Annemarie is a working class Welsh girl. That's who I am, who happens to be a musician. I think that completely sums me up. And then I grew up and became a working musician, a composer, musical director, and then I stupidly opened a drama college. That is kind of 30 seconds, although I should throw in, just because they kill me, I am also a wife and a parent, because otherwise that seems like I have not negated my children in one fell swoop. So they are up there as very important. Gosh, if they're listening to that, my children will be like, oh, you didn't even mention us. That is bad.
My kids are used to that.
Shocking. But yeah, the Welsh part is very important, especially today. We're doing this on St. David's Day. Which is the patron saint of Wales.
Well, that was exactly what we planned, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you very much for bringing me on St. David's Day.
You're welcome. So I want to take it back for a minute before we get into all the other current stuff. Were you always in a musical theater? Was that something that you grew up with, or did you discover it a little bit later in life?
No, I was always into music. There was always music in my house. My dad had a piano, and he was not great. He's sort of a 3-chord trick man, but so the piano was there anyway, and then I just always played it. I didn't really like practicing, but I really enjoyed playing, which is probably why I ended up being an arranger, actually, when I sort of go back to make connections. So no, and I didn't know that you could make music as a career. That was completely out of where I live, and that doesn't happen. In fact, my background isn't to go to college. My brother and myself were the only people in our family to go to college. So all of that, I just thought I was having a lovely old time doing it. And then I don't know, when I was about 16, somebody mentioned that you could make a living out of music. And that was just like bonkers. So I did. I went to college, but I did performing arts, not music, because I'm not very good at all the academic stuff with the music. I'm quite a simplistic soul. I just like hearing it, as opposed to, I'm not keen on analysing it or anything. Anyway, so I did a performing arts degree, as it was then, Middlesex Poly in London, which in those days was sort of quite an avant-garde place, where there was no commercial theatre there. There was a lot of, arto, devised pieces. It was really deep and meaningful stuff going on. And I was kind of like a bit of an outsider in a place full of outsiders. So I think all of us were quite a disparate group of all people that just enjoyed being creative, but didn't have anywhere to go with it. And the Middlesex Poly course was quite famous at the time for bringing those sorts of people together. And you're quite radical back then if you're into a poly, not a uni. So that, so I was really radical, not. But anyway, I went to the poly, but then I didn't even quite find my niche there, because I just wanted to do a shouting. So I already knew I liked those things, but nobody else wanted to. They were all into either jazz or really experimental music. So I was a little bit of an outsider there. So I slowly sort of eked it into my course as much as I could. And it was quite a nice course that you could eke things in. And then sort of discovered this world of MDing, and I really liked that. And I spent a little while oscillating between, should I be a performer, should I be an MD? Mm-hmm. I'm a terrible performer for an MD, because I'm always like, oh, we could do this. This is a good idea. Why don't we do that? So they had a really sort of stern chat with me about, you decide. You can't do both, because you're either taking instructions or you're giving it. You can't be the person that thinks they can do both. Yeah. So then I kind of landed as an MD. And then just sort of slowly found my way into musical theatre, and sort of then ironically actually went back to Middlesex quite quickly to teach musical theatre there. I'd sort of eked it in enough. They decided they could even teach it on the course from then on in. So no, I didn't always want to. So I didn't know that you could do it. I just didn't know that you could be in theatre, actually. Clearly people were, because I was going to watch them and I really enjoyed it. I didn't understand the steps, and my course was rubbish, because my course they sat us down and went, you're not being trained to be teachers and you're not being trained to be performers. And you kind of sat there at 18 going, well, I don't know what this is about then. Yeah. But it's a lovely SU bar, so we'll have a nice few years, but I'm not sure where I'm going. So the course was deliberately obtuse, I think, in where it wanted us to go. Yeah. But with that becomes a freedom, doesn't it, of doing whatever you want to do and finding your own path and working out where in the world you belong. But you left the course with no contacts in the outside world at all. Really? Just a group of people. Yeah, like not one. But I don't know, I just kind of found my niche and enjoyed arranging, so that back then it just been over in London, it was just when they were starting to put really big shows in tiny spaces. So when I started, says Grandma Thomas here, that it was just the West End and Fringe, that was it. Yeah. And then suddenly, as I sort of left college, this thing called Off West End started to slowly break through. And I was just very lucky. I was an MD for a company called the Steam Industry, which was the first company to do all the big shows in tiny spaces and to kind of strip them right down. And spent a long time with them, just learning my craft and honing it and understanding it, before then sort of going into a bit more mainstream theatre. What were some of the shows that they put on that helped shape you as an MD? Well, the first show I did for them was Sweet Charity, and that was a takeover gig. I took over from somebody else. So that just kind of was definitely my stepping stone. But then from then on in, maybe some of your UK listeners will know of a place called Battersea Arts Centre, which back then used to do these huge Christmas spectacular musicals, which I was so lucky to do all of them. And I don't know, we did The Sound of Music, The King and I, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, which was just the most gorgeous show to do in that space. But just stripping everything right back, just I don't know, piano, bass and drums, that was it. But loads of vocal arrangements, which is what I particularly like doing. And so immersive, because the casts were so big, the audiences were naturally so small because of the venue. Yeah. So I don't know, I used to love the Christmases down there. Financially, they were appalling, but in terms of creative and in terms of what we managed to do, I think really proud of those shows. And, seeing how those ideas spread and lots of people and organizations started to do them. And now it's the norm. That's where you can do shows. So, yeah, it's an exciting time to be part of all of that, I think. And so you cut your chops there. You learned, you grew as an MD and as a person and doing all that stuff. So once you were finished with that, how long were you with that company? Oh gosh, I was with them for years. Okay. About 7 or 8 years, maybe a bit longer. Yeah, because what happened was that those shows we kind of did all these big revivals. And then Phil Wilmot, who was the guy that I was working with all the time, he then suggested that we write our own show. So we kind of did that, and they commissioned us to write a show. And at that time, he was doing the melody line, and I was just kind of filling in a bit. And we did a show called Uncle Ebenezer, which we really quite enjoyed doing. And then we thought, we should make it a bigger show, because Uncle Ebenezer just had classical music in it, basically, that we popularized. And then we did a show called Around the World in 80 Days, which went on to get published. It's now published by Concord. And that kind of really made me see that maybe I wasn't only arranging, that I think I was kind of composing. Yeah. And it gave me the confidence, I suppose, to start putting myself out there as a composer as well. So did quite a few of those things before then kind of moving into the mainstream, I guess. Right. So once you left the company, what did you go on to do after that? Now that you've discovered, maybe I can write shows and I am more than just an MD, I can arrange and compose. So yeah, well, I used to write some shows for companies like the NYMT, the National Youth Music Theatre, which is now BYMT as well. There's a kind of offshoot company. So I spent a lot of time doing shows and commissions for them. I went off and just did some freelance stuff. I guess one of my proudest things, or one of my biggest shows, would be I did the first reimagined production of Rent outside of Broadway. Oh. So we did Rent in Dublin, which was the first time that people were allowed to change to sort of play around with it. Because, up until then, everybody had to do the version of Rent. Yeah. So that was really nice. So I managed to kind of arrange on a much bigger scale, and they got permission to do that. So that was quite exciting. But that also sort of taught me, interestingly, that I didn't like it. That the more commercial it got, the more restricted you are. Whereas if you're doing it on a shoestring, you've got so much more artistic freedom. And I suppose really legally you probably haven't, but it kind of felt like that, yes, to be fair. Yeah. So that was really interesting, because literally as soon as I arrived, for want of a cornier phrase, I kind of realized I didn't like the destination. So completely stepped back from that to then work on smaller shows that I could be creative with. And I did have that artistic freedom. And of course, as part of that, then it becomes more and more writing, and more people were asking me to write things.
Great. And so how did you transition from MD to now composer to starting a theater school? Because that's got to be the natural progression, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody should do that. It's in the career guidebook, it's
exactly.
Like, that's what you do. You sort of tick off things. It was just really daft. It's because, like everybody in theatre, you have to have that, as they now call it, a hustle. You've got to have your sideline of what it is that you're doing. And I always taught, and I really enjoyed teaching. I taught a little college in Hertfordshire for about 19 years. And it was a nice place I could come and go, whenever I wasn't doing shows. But I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed seeing students grow. I thought that was really exciting. And also, given what I just said about my own college life, I liked being able to go, no, this is how you get into the industry. This is how you do it. Because I never had that when I was a student. And then, I don't know, a few things happened that I wasn't particularly happy with. And I didn't like the way a couple of colleges I was working at, I didn't like the way they were running. And I sort of became a bit grumpy about sort of colleges just as a whole.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know, they seem to have lost their, when I started, I liked working in a place where the students were first. And it wasn't about anything else other than what do the students need. Yep. And that kind of changed a little bit. And then I went to work somewhere else, and I thought that place was all about the students, and it wasn't. So I hated that. So I became a bit miserable about colleges not being about students. Mm-hmm. I understand they're a business, but I don't believe you should be profiting off education. I've got a really big issue with it. So that for me is quite tricky.
Yeah.
And then in the industry, so I was still working, and then in the industry, there was a percentage of graduates coming out that just didn't seem to understand where they were, or what they were doing, or their attitude, and just what good company members. And I became that person, sat in a dressing room, and the two actresses will know who they are because they regularly admit that it's their fault that I opened a drama college. And I sat in a dressing room on a show with these two actresses, all of us about the same age, just kind of moaning. I was moaning about the colleges I taught at. I was moaning about the graduates. And we all sort of recognized that we had become those people we didn't want to be. And they said to me, well, if you feel like that, you should just open your own place. Because that would kind of sort it, because then we wouldn't be moaning about the graduates, because you'd be putting out graduates that we'd want to work with.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be moaning about your teaching, because, well, you'd be teaching them what you thought was right. So that had sort of planted the idea. And then I sort of went for a walk with my wife, and I was kind of still moaning. Seemingly that's all I did. 12 years ago, I was just moaning. And I foolishly said, oh, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a Christmas #1, and with the profits, I'm going to open a drama college, because, life is that straightforward. And
wait, is this a 1940s musical movie? Let's write a song.
Yeah, no, because it's that easy, isn't it, to write a hit song? It's going to be like, which is what my wife said. That was her response. She went, you've literally never written anything that is that popular to create that sort of revenue, and you have no foot in sort of the pop world, so that's just not going to happen. But if you want to open a college, let's kind of remortgage and let's do it. Let's just let's just go for it.
Yeah.
Which to this day, I hold a grudge against her for saying that, because that's exactly what we did. We remortgaged, and the kind of college came together really quickly, because I'd already been around sort of drama college world for, I don't know, 10, 20 years. And I already knew how, I'd already sort of formed a couple of courses, and I'd written a couple of courses. So I knew everything I needed to do. So that bit came through quite easy, and I knew who I wanted to work with. And then I was just very lucky. I sort of found the venue relatively quickly. And then, I don't know, I think I was just dumb, because I just kind of went, okay, well, I'll do it then.
Yeah.
And it was as simple as that. And everything, you know, the MTA has become something very different to the norm. But it was all done by accident. I didn't set out to create this college that was going to change stuff. You know, I just wanted to do a college that I thought would work. But even like dumb things, for example, so we'd remortgage to get some money together to pay for rent on the, you know, on our rooms to run the college. And I resented the fact that I would still have to pay rent during the summer when there's a big break. And I couldn't kind of work out in my very simplistic music brain what was the point of that? Why do you pay dead money? And I know that certainly over here, everybody goes, well, run another course in the summer. So why would I want to do that? Like, I'm already running one. Why do I want to run another one? And that seems like, no, I don't want to do that. So I just thought, well, we should just run it through the summer, because that makes sense to me. I'm paying for a space. Yeah. So, and then it's like, oh, well, if we're doing that much work, we don't need to run for 3 years. That actually, if we look at what we normally do in a 3-year cycle, you know, when you go back after a big break, you spend the first few weeks just catching up on stamina and where you were at. So if we don't have any big breaks, we're not catching up. We can just keep plowing through. So hence the reason that we sort of came up with the UK's first 2-year musical theatre course, literally because I didn't want to pay rent on a dead space. As inventive as that. How about that?
Hey, you know what? That's not a bad idea, right? It's necessity is the mother of invention, right? I don't want to pay for this. It's not being used, you know, and then you snowballed that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, completely. And then just like everything to me that seemed like common sense. Like one of the things that used to frustrate me at some of the other places I worked at was you'd say something that you know was true in the industry today, and then somebody who had not stepped foot in the industry for the last 20 years would go, no. And it's like, well, actually, if we're all in the industry today, then we're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. You know, I don't believe in there should be a party whip that everybody's told this is what you say at college. I think everybody should have freedom of choice, bizarrely. But surely if we're all in it, then we're all saying the same thing by definition. You know, this is how the industry works today. So things like that. So having a faculty that were entirely freelance working professionals, and like I didn't realize that had never really been done before. There's certainly lots of freelancers going around and working in lots of colleges, but this was going to be a college completely staffed with freelancers who could just come and go, could work. You have to be working in the industry to work at the college. So we have to therefore give you the freedom. Because again, that was the thing that used to annoy me at the other colleges. They used to say to me, yeah, you can come and work here because we like your experience. And then as soon as you said, you have some time off because you've got a show, go, oh, well, no, it's really tricky.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that makes it work, isn't it? So I kind of wanted to be the antithesis of that, and to have a staff group that could just come and go, because I figured there was enough people around. We're like 10 minutes from the West End. I am not going to be short of staff if I've got a good core faculty. So for sure, we have to look a little bit harder to find the people that are both brilliant performers, so that they're at the top of their profession, and are also really good teachers. But then we've ended up with the most amazing faculty that I'm in daily awe of, but don't tell them.
Well,
it'll go to their heads.
Well, unfortunately, if they're listening, they now know, and you're going to have so many problems the next day after this airs with just egos.
They won't listen. They'll see that my name's on it and go, we hear her all the time. We're not going to hear her. This is not going to be a hobby for us now as well.
Well, as a guy putting on a podcast, that's awful to hear, but okay.
I'll force them to do it. I'll force them to do it. It's part of their contract. It'll be fine.
So what year was this that you started the school?
So We had our first intake in 2009.
Okay.
And we had 13 started with us, who they used to call themselves the lucky 13. And then one left after the first year, went back. They were from Switzerland, and they went back to Switzerland. And we had 12 that graduated in 2011, and they were our first lot.
Wow. And how was that for you? Do you know that experience of that first day in class, having those 13 in front of you, you've got the faculty, it must have been overwhelming and exciting and every emotion under the sun. And so how did that first year go for you?
Okay, so I didn't have any of those emotions. I just had scared. That's all I had. I was just scared. And they'll tell you, you know, that if they were here, they would tell you, like, the pressure on all of us was because you kind of have to be good. You know, that first year, you have to be good. And we've always been so lucky. Well, lucky, and we choose very carefully that all of our students are of a standard. So I think even from our first year, they were so good, or, you know, so trainable. There's always clearly work to be done, otherwise they wouldn't be with it. But we kind of went through it together, myself and the originals, and I was very honest about what I didn't know, and, you know, honest about, we knew it would be okay in terms of where we were getting to, but we were going to have some little sort of pitfalls along the way, and we would find them out together. So the first year was I think a little bit more children in terms of, well, we'll just find out as we go along. Kind of, we had the plan in place. The plan was very, very clear, and in fact, the plan hasn't changed at all since when we started, other than a few tweaks here and there. But things are sort of that I hadn't clocked, and I do understand how ridiculous this sounds. It's things like, part of the MTA's sort of uniqueness is that we're the only college that does a public performance every term. And I didn't realize that. So I wrote the course. That was part of my, you know, grand plan. I sort of forgot that I'd never actually put on a show. I had never produced a show in my life. I was an MD. I'd been very lucky to have worked for years, but I'd never produced a show. I'd never hired stage management. I'd always said hello to stage management on the first day of rehearsals. So those were the things that sort of, I mean, it was just learning curve after learning curve for that entire year. And so many things we got wrong, so many things we got right as well. But those first few shows, I think the students would agree, it was a little bit hairy to just, we didn't have the right personnel always, and, you know, just trying to find our way through it. And then when the second year started, so finally, you know, we had the college, a 2-year program, had 2 years. Oh, then it's like starting again, because you have to kind of, it's a whole new dynamic. We wanted our first year group to still feel safe. We wanted the new group to know it was okay. And to be honest with you, I'm just in awe of the students that came to us for those first few years, because we had nothing. We had no reputation. They knew that they would be our reputation. And I think that is a really brave mark of those people that opted to come to us. And I'm hugely indebted to them for taking a punt on what was just like a bit of an idea, really. But you know, it worked out okay, and they all went on. Once our first graduate group all secured agents, there was a big sigh of relief. It was like, okay, that's okay, all right, this is good, and they're okay.
Yeah, it's just but then, that first one, right?
Yeah, completely. But then, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? Because once the first lot have got it, I kind of then you get worried about the second lot. Like, what if they don't? What if they're not right? And then the third lot are coming. So I've learned this constant ball of stress of, oh my God, I'm responsible for them now. Oh no. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody's okay on the course. And for sure, you know, you definitely get that wrong a lot. And you just try to keep getting it better every step of the way. But I think we're very lucky. We do a college for life, which I believe is the only place over here that does it. So I'm still in touch with all of those people, and they're still part of the college. Yeah. So it like that first year group we've just been speaking about, 3 of them are literally having children this year. And you know, the fact that they private message me to let me know that that these things are arriving for them before it's publicly announced. I'm just so flattered that they still want to keep us involved in their lives.
Yeah. Well, I went to theater college for the same thing here in Toronto at Sheridan College, and yeah, you grow a relationship with some of the teachers or professors or whatever you want to call them, and you become that tight knit group that it is a family, right? It's just not by blood, and you don't ever lose touch with them.
It's interesting, isn't it? The students laugh at me because I always resent that term family, because I've sort of settled for dysfunctional family because I feel that sort of probably sums us up better. But it is true, and I think if the course is doing its job, you'll end up with a really tight year group, or hopefully a lot of really good friends. And I think actually in the last year with the pandemic, we've seen that, because they've all been meeting up. They've all been meeting up, on Zoom and stuff. Certainly during the first lockdown, we have an annual, we have a weekly quiz as part of the MTA course, like you do. And of course, everybody has now cottoned on to that during the pandemic. But it was so lovely seeing my year groups all on Zoom together doing their quizzes. And it's like, oh, okay, there's something that's unifying about that, and it's anchoring them, and that's really good. And they're weathering that storm together, and they're there for each other. And I think that's really humbling to see that they've managed to do that.
Nice. So you've been in business for 11 years, right? 2009, you said. So 11 years of MTA. Now, the reason we're talking is because I was on Twitter and I saw that the school posted an ad about Canada and the UK and a bunch of other countries to get in and get their applications and things like that. So let's move to that. Tell us a little bit about MTA, what it offers, and kind of what you'll experience if you do go there.
Okay, so yes, so this came about because of the great thing that is Brexit in this country. And I mean that obviously without meaning it at all. We've always, since we opened, had a lot of European students. And I love that. I love the diversity of people from overseas coming to the UK. We've never, ever charged an overseas student any more than we charge UK students. I don't buy into that. I don't understand why they think it costs you more. They're blatantly just, I can't say it, can I? But I don't understand it. So I've always promised that everybody would have the same fee. Mm-hmm. So obviously that makes us quite attractive to the European community. And it's been great. And Brexit stops that for us because we're not a degree course. We're a private college doing purely vocational training. It means that we will not be now authorised to sponsor a student visa. Which frustrates me beyond words, because anyway, that's far be it for me to get political. Just follow my Twitter, and that will take you there on its own. But so, and I just felt really sad that we would potentially just have UK students there, because I think we're the lesser for that. Mm-hmm. So I was looking around and speaking to some colleagues, and they were saying, no, there is a visa that you can have that means you can come and study in the UK and be here for 5 years. And because our course is just 2 years, I thought, oh gosh, that's really interesting. So a colleague was telling me that if you're from New Zealand or Canada or Australia or Hong Kong, you can come and study at the MTA under this visa. And it's like, oh my God, so that could be great, because we would love to have overseas students. Again, I can't stress this enough, because I know what other people do, not because we want extra money, but we really like the new cultures coming into the college. Yeah. So if you come to us, what you would get a completely unique program. You would get a 2-year program, not a 3-year program. You get 8 10-week terms. So it's always a 10-week term, 3 weeks off, 10 weeks, 3 weeks off. You get public performances at the end of every term, be that on stage or on screen, because we're also the only MT course to do a 50-50 stage screen split. Wow. So you're as likely to see our students working in screen on telly and film as you are on stage. And that's been an interesting journey as well for us. But anyway, so we are triple threat, although I don't particularly like that word. It's, I'd like to think of us more as multidisciplinary. So it's an even split between dance, acting and singing. So 3.5 hours of dance every morning, and in the afternoon 2-hour sessions of whether it's singing or acting or voice. sort of quite a big tradition of choral singing at the college, sort of good rep stuff, you know, sort of getting your teeth into the different genres within musical theatre. Specialist studies, so my big thing is, if you're paying to study, you should be teacher led. So every moment you're with us is contact time. So it's like 40 contact hours a week. And for me, that's really important, because you shouldn't be paying to be on your own in a room with other students. I don't see the benefit of that. Yeah. So similarly, I don't believe in half term. Like, why do you have a half term, or, you know, a reading week? Like, read in your own time. Let's just get on and study. So, but I do think that you need a break from sort of technical studies, because it's so hard to get all the technique. So we have a specialist week in each term, whether that be, I don't know, like puppetry with our two main puppeteer teachers are Mervyn Miller, who's the Mr. Warhorse himself, or Jimmy Grimes from Brunskill and Grimes. It works for us as well. Stage combat, led by the amazing Haruka Kuruda. Cabaret by Paul L. Martin. So learning it as an art form, as opposed to just, you know, shove your portfolio on the stand and sing your songs. Developing new musicals, because we have a policy to support new musicals. So we work with Perfect Pitch over here to help develop and workshop new musicals. We shoot a short film, because we're stage and screen. So you kind of have a break from, you know, this is a plie, this is your pirouette, this is your top C, but you're also learning other skills that are really important. So you do that. Then at the end of every term, the last 4 weeks of every term, everything stops, and we just do a production. And the productions are, you do a play in your first term, you do a review in your second term, which is where we're at the moment. But in your first year, you're just on for a couple of numbers, but you're in it. And then usually, when it's not a pandemic, there's a musical in June. And that's really to help the people that haven't been signed at this point. Then it's all about you if you're a first year. Then we write a show for you, we commission a show for you. Up until this year, it had been in for theatre, but as of this year, we're doing it as a film musical, because we did that last year and we really enjoyed what freedom that brought us. Yeah. So we're going to carry on with that, and it fits in with our brief a little bit better. Then you do a panto. You know, the UK, that great art form. Such a skill set to learn. So you do a panto, then it's back to the review time, but this time it's all about you, because you're a second year and it's all about the graduating year. Then you do agent one-to-one meetings. So the agents come in and literally meet you one-to-one, none of this big panel thing, because there's only, the maximum we could have is 22 in a year. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that it's individual studying, as opposed to we're getting a year group through. Then it's the musical, and if you haven't been signed by that point, it's a chance for you to really step up and take the lead. And then it's a showcase, which as of last year, and we're going to keep this, it will be a stream showcase for casting directors and stuff. So that's kind of everything that you're getting.
Nice. I really like the specialty week. Like when I was in school, we didn't get that. And how many of my colleagues from going to school, I know, I didn't stay in performing. You know, I went off and I went to school, and I ran a mascot company. So I was performing, but I was DJing. I did all this other stuff. Now I'm a radio host. It's great to get, you know, those other skills that you might not think about, but then realize, oh, I do have this skill and I can incorporate it into my XYZ of my artistry. So that's a brilliant idea.
Completely. Well, that comes from my training. I've got to say that in my Middlesex days, because that was so eclectic of everything you learned. Mm-hmm. And speaking as somebody that really loved commercial theatre but wasn't getting it there, at the time I thought a lot of the stuff I was doing was a bit silly, or I couldn't see the point of it. So, you know, I did Commedia dell'arte there with and clowning with John Wright, and I kind of didn't quite see the point of it until years later. I was like, oh my god, yeah, that really has fed into this. That is so important. So it's like, of course, I'm going to put Commedia on my course, because in the second year you do panto, Commedia and panto. There is such a direct link. And in fact, just learning about stillness on stage, just being able to lose yourself in a moment in a character. Why would we not do that? Similarly, you know, puppetry, what a great skill. And we were doing that before puppetry became a thing that everybody was doing anyway. But I just think it's really nice to have all those different strings to your bow, to just, because you never know, do you? You might suddenly find out puppetry is your thing, or stage combat is your thing. Or I know we've got quite a few of the students that, because they write their own short film, then they've gone on to be writers. We've got somebody that's an award nominated writer that did the course. because they wrote when they were on the course and realized that was something that they were really interested in. So I think the more experience we give people, the better it is, I believe.
For sure. The more colors to paint with, the better you're
Oh,
going to be.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. And also, it makes you more respectful. I think it makes you more respectful of everybody's craft,
Yes.
because you can. I suppose that comes back to why I sort of started the college, doesn't it? Like, I think sometimes actors think it's just about them. Not all actors, but some actors, and they sort of forget. They forget it's a team. They forget about everybody's skill set. So the more we can open people's eyes to that, I think the better company member they go out to be.
Nice. So over the 11 years, who are some of the alumni that come out of the program that some of our UK listeners might recognize?
Well, I always sort of deliberately dodge this question, but I always say why I dodge it. It's because if I say, oh, whoever, that makes it sound like you're only successful if you have done X, Y, Z jobs. And I've got a real difficulty with that, because it's where are we placing success? So I think our industry is incredibly difficult. If you're managing to sustain a career within the industry, then I think you're being really successful. And whether you're working in a holiday camp, whether you're on one of the major cruise liners, whether you're in the West End, whether you're in a major film, you are all being successful. And once I understand the question, what we have on our website, there's a page called the Ambassador page, and every single year group are on that page. They've all got their own page, and people can just go and click and see what they're all doing. Because I think it's really important. It's a bit like there was a thing on Twitter the other day about colleges that are only promoting the students that have done big jobs. Yeah. And it's like, what? And I think it's true. It's a perception of success, whereas actually what I consider to be successful is, so we've had our 10th graduating year went out last year, and pre-pandemic, we haven't sort of done our survey yet for a while for obvious reasons, but pre-pandemic, 78% of my students were still in the industry. So that's after 10 years. Now, I think that is hugely successful, and so proud of them for sustaining those careers. And again, it doesn't matter what they've gone on to do. Yeah. They are managed to earn a living, and they are successful in their own life, and yeah. That's really important.
Well, the nice thing is when you say the career, again, it's not just that triple threat, right? It's now you've got comediality, you've got the puppetry, you've got the writing, right? So you've created a big network of artists with so many skills, and yeah.
Oh, completely. And I think it's certainly over here in the UK, it does tend to be about, are you in the West End? Mm-hmm. What I've seen, are you in the West End? And absolutely, we have got alumni that have been, I always call it, we don't call them alumni, we call them ambassadors, because I think it's about going out there and representing us and representing what we are. So, and we have absolutely got ambassadors. In fact, of the 78% that are in the industry or pre-pandemic, 22% of them have gone on to secure roles in the West End or major #1 tours. So actually, our stats are very, very good. But also, there are some that never wanted to do those sorts of jobs. There are some that have had hugely successful careers on cruise ships, working their way through, the lower end of that sort of industry, right through to now they're over in Florida rehearsing their shows on the big production numbers. Hugely successful people. And yet the perception should be, oh, well, unlucky, they've only done this. And it's like, no, they have solidly worked for 9 years. Yeah. They've earned enough money to buy themselves houses in the UK. Like, I'm thinking they are very successful performers.
Sure.
And again, the perception is, but they're not in the West End. Well, no, because they're seeing a damn sight more of the world. And I'm a little bit jealous of their Facebook, to be fair. So I don't want to, we don't sort of buy into that myth as a college. We're always just about, there's a 5-year plan. And if you want to end up in the West End, if that is your dream, then that's great. But it's the stepping stones you get to get there, or, you take to get there, are so important as well. And you might find out a bit like myself, when you get there, it's not what you want.
Yeah, for sure. I know that our industry had such a narrow view of what success is. right? It is. If you haven't won an Olivier, if you won a Tony, if you haven't been in the West End, you haven't been on Broadway, and pretty much that, if you haven't done that, well, sorry, you're not a success. I'm sorry, you've only, been in 40, community or smaller or cruise ships or whatever. You don't consider that a success? If you're still getting paid and working, to me,
I completely agree. I've always said to the students that, well, my idea of success is, have they managed to earn their fees back doing what we trained them to do?
Yeah.
And a huge percentage of them have. Now that, I think, is success. Are they happy as human beings doing whatever they're doing? I think predominantly they are. That is success. Success should not be weighted on, oh, well, have you got a profile? Do people know who you are? Who cares what people think? Are you happy in your career path? Then you are a success, and we are proud that we trained you. And also, have you decided that this isn't for you? We've got a lot of people that have changed careers. We'll say a lot, whatever the 100 take away 78% is.
Yeah.
But people that have changed careers, the majority of those have changed careers whilst being very successful working in theatre and film, it has to be said.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also a success, that you've tried it, you've lived your best life, you've done it, you've realized it's not for you, you wanted to do a different path. That's great. We've got ambassadors, that we've got a midwife, paramedics. But my favorite, as he knows, is the person that works for Apple, because now we all get discounts. And like everything, you are a success. If you're making your way through the world, you are a success.
For sure. And the skill sets they learned at the school, whether they're in the arts or not, is so applicable. I know I've used so many of the skills I've learned in theater when I wasn't doing theater stuff, and it makes such a difference.
Completely. In fact, I was talking to our paramedic ambassador the other day about this, and it was just saying, has your training counted at all in all of this? And they were saying this, that actually they're training just on people skills and reading people and understanding people. And, I was going to say you can't buy that, but of course you can, because you train. But it's really good transferable skills.
Nice. So how is, we all know the pandemic happened, and so how did you change up things for yourselves, and what did you do to keep the school going, considering everything else going on?
Well, we went straight online. We were very lucky. It was this time last year, wasn't it? So we had our big review. The review, Something or Something New, is kind of our flagship show. And we closed that on the Saturday. And I think myself and the students could all see the world was closing in on us very quickly, because by the Monday, all the theatres went dark, and 2 weeks later, the world was in lockdown. So we were kind of really lucky that we were performing literally right up to theatres going dark. There is a rumor that maybe we even closed the theatres because it was us, but I'm not going to go there. I believe it was a bigger thing than just our review was storming it. But literally the week after we'd finished the show, we had auditions. So we went online. I'd done a course a little while ago on Zoom. So I knew of this thing, which of course is bizarre, because now we all know what Zoom is. Zoom is the place to be. But I felt like I was really edgy, because I already knew about it. Didn't really sort of get it, but I got all my students together to go, look, we're going to be fine. We're going to do this thing. We're going to go online, and we're going to go into this thing called Zoom. Just go with me. I don't know how to use it yet. We'll all be there. So we did our first online auditions within 4 days of theatres closing. And it kind of quickly realized that actually Zoom was going to be okay. We could make this work. My staff had a crash course, through trial and error of what could we do online, what couldn't we do online. And then the challenge for us was to take out all the parts of the course that were impossible online and replace them with something equally as good but different. So for example, as we all know, you can't do group singing online. And I've already said, like, choral singing, that kind of harmony singing, is such a key anchor point for all of us at the college. So to take that out was massive, but of course latency is not our friend. But so I needed to find something musical that would still spark, and also being mindful that the world was now scary, and that I was still responsible for 30 odd young people, so I wanted to make it okay. So we we took out choral singing because that was going to be pointless. I didn't want them all singing to their screen on mute. I saw no merit in that at all. But so I did a quick sort of checkup to find out who had a guitar, who had a piano, who had access to all these things. And then for 2 terms, I think it was, we gave them keyboard and guitar lessons, because you can learn that really well on Zoom. We increased their one-to-one singing lessons because you can do that really well on Zoom. We found out bizarrely that actually, space aside, because space is a massive issue clearly, but actually there's loads to be gained from dancing on Zoom. We thought dancing was going to be the big issue, but actually our students made huge progress dancing on Zoom. So we just completely changed the course. And then I wanted to, what I also quickly realized was that the world became much smaller thanks to the internet. And we were all stuck indoors. And I have my lovely friend, Claiborne Elder, Mr. Broadway. I contacted him to say, look, I think my student's going to be really upset. It'd be really nice if we could have a couple of guests from Broadway. Would you come on and just kind of join us for Q&A? Have you got any mates? Have you got any mates that would come on? I don't know, just Q&A. And then we ended up with this most phenomenal term. I think, looking back, I might have gone a bit OTT with Q&As, but the students were there with Clay came on to do the most lovely and uplifting Q&A. We had Julia Murney, we had Laura Osnes, we had Jeremy Jordan. I can't think of everybody else. Well, anyway, it's all like loads of people and loads of UK people, film directors that normally we couldn't get hold of. They all came in. All the casting directors were free and really up for it. They were having one-to-one casting meetings with the head of BBC. So it was like it offered us a lot more opportunities, and it was very much about seeing what we could do and what, as opposed to what we couldn't do, if that makes sense. We knew that we had to take a production out. There's no way we could get a production ready for June. So we did that, but instead we got our second years of graduating year to do 3 music videos, so that there was still something that we were giving them and we were offering them up. And that our then first years had more technical studies than they normally have. Then we managed to do blended learning because we're stage and screen, so we could get out. We could do lots of filming on location. So they managed to film their short film, do their show reels. Meanwhile, by this point, I knew that we had to do a production, and we were supposed to be going into production with a brand new musical called The Time Machine, which we hadn't sort of finished writing, which was useful because we didn't do it. But I contacted my collaborator, Nick Simpson, to ask him in May, could we write a show to be done online with all the students filming it in isolation on their phones? Could we just do that?
Yeah.
So he's a bit stupid like me. I went, yeah, we'll do that then. We'll do that. And then I contacted Adam Lenson, who is a genius of all things digital theatre, to say, look, I think we're going to do a show with the students. We haven't written it yet, so I don't know what it's about. I know that they can just film it on their smartphones, and I don't know anything else. Would you like to do it? And Adam was just great. He was like, yeah, well, that sounds great. Let's do that. So we did. We commissioned a show and got it up. It's still actually on our YouTube, called Coming Home, which is literally the students all stuck in their various locations around the world, filming their little bits on their phones. But it's there's an overarching story. So we kept really busy. Then we were back in the studio. We managed to do a whole term in the studio. Did 2 stream performances. We did a play in the studios, and we did a panto online, which amazing. Sort of streaming that out to schools. Normally, we do. I don't know. We've got schools audiences in the area of North London where we are, but suddenly we could offer it all over the UK. Yeah. 27,000 children saw the panto, which is just a joy, isn't it? And now we're kind of getting ready to go back into the theatre in a nice circularity, doing the review show. Which it feels really emotional, actually, just to be going back there.
Well, congratulations on not only starting it, but keeping it going over the years and working your magic through this crazy pandemic. So congratulations on everything that you've done.
Oh, well, thank you. I think I have an amazing faculty who are so up for anything and so creative, and also the students. I think a small college means that we can just keep talking. and we can kind of get through it all together. And because we do so much work, like our pastoral care, which won us an award, because we do a lot around mental health and a lot about mental health initiatives. So that has sort of come into its own this year for sure.
Well, again, I want to thank you. Before we go, I always ask 3 questions of my guests. All right.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong answers, but we're going to learn a little bit about you.
Okay. Okay.
So don't be scared. So
okay, I am a bit scared, but go.
Okay. Go. Everything in life, you got to be a little bit scared, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. That's okay.
All right. So question number 1. What creator or team within musical theater has had a great influence on you? Could be a composer, a lyricist, a director, producer, actor, stage manager, even could be famous, non-famous, like a teacher. Is there somebody in the industry who's had a good influence on you?
Oh, I would say as a composer, I like Flaherty and Aarons are my. They are kind of my go-to team. I just think they create such amazing soundscapes of what they're doing. Yeah. So if I could do that in any show, that I would be in all of them. And my hero has always been Diane Langton, who's an actress over here. Just because there's always that one show, isn't it, that you go to see, and it was that one performer, and it was Diane Langton in Windy City. The Victoria Palace Theatre, and who actually, in nice circularity, Diane has gone on to become a mate of mine and is one of the patrons of the college. So I quite like that kind of circularity.
Those are correct answers.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can't get those wrong. So yes. Question number 2, and what people have been waiting for from the very beginning of the podcast, most popular song that people just keep singing.
Okay, well, they don't. How about that for a controversial answer? They don't, because all of the students are so individual. We never get a song that everybody sings.
Is there a show?
No, we go through little phases. Like a lot of the girls go for waitress at the moment, I think. They all sort of quite like that. But no, there's not a particular show, actually. It slightly swings and roundabouts with stuff, because you kind of see it come back and forth, like Mac and Mabel always crops up. But no, they do tend to, maybe because of the way the course is structured as well, they tend to keep looking for things, and then they bring us really interesting stuff, actually, that make us, like the review, they bring their own materials. So there isn't one.
Okay.
Not a genuine answer.
All right. As a side to note to question this, if you were auditioning, what would you sing right now? What would be your go-to audition song?
Well, if I had a really good belt voice, I'd love to do something like, and if I was a completely different performer and there was a different world and a parallel universe, so my fantasy world, I would be doing, banging out the belting stuff like Rain on My Parade. That's what I'd be doing. And unfortunately, I don't have that voice. I'm a real kind of warbler. So I have to sing the stuff that I find a bit dull, to be fair. But certainly my fantasy is banging out those big belting songs, the big Broadway belters, any of them. Nice. I just think they're so electric, aren't they?
Yes. Oh, for sure. Just hearing them, you could just sit there and you can feel the waves of the sound, coming off.
Oh, it just reverberates through your very being, and they sort of sum up musical theatre for me. Or the Jerry Herman too. When that beat is going on. Yeah. Oh, I just smile as soon as I hear it. Love it. Just
another correct answer.
Nice. Thank you very much. I'm doing very well at these.
And final question, maybe the most revealing about who you are. Food in the theater or cell phones in the theater, which are worse?
Oh, I'm a bit torn on this, food I hate. I hate food in the theater. Mm-hmm. I really hate it. Cell phones, I have a love-hate relationship with them. I think possibly if theatre's to move on, I think people have to make peace with that. But food, especially smelly food and loud food, no. So I'd say bring on the cell phones. Let's all make peace with it. Let's all learn a better etiquette with it, but keep your food outside.
Yeah. I would have also accepted neither. Or we could have just say, the pandemic, the one good thing is we don't have to worry about either of those when we're watching shows online.
I do think we're going to, Six have done it really well over here, haven't they? That they now, as part of their marketing, they allowed everybody to record that final bit of the show. And that's really helped them sort of get their, that and being a brilliant show, but that cult status. So I suspect I think we're going to end up at a time when people are going to want those things happening.
Yeah. Good enough answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So 3 for 3. Perfect. Annemarie, thank you again so much for coming on and introducing to myself and a lot of people the Musical Theatre Academy and break a leg with everything you do with it in the future.
Well, thank you very much. For people that want to find out more, we're at www.themta.co.uk, or we're on all social media as @the Online.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me on.
We were just speaking with Annemarie Lewis-Thomas, the founder of the Musical Theatre Academy, here on Be Our Guest. Tune in next week when we'll speak with a new guest or guests about their love, life, and passion that is musical theatre. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.